Welcome back to the channel. Here are my top 5 players from the Rugby World Cup semi-finals. It didn't feel right to do a whole 15 because there was only 4 teams, so I think I wanted to pick out the absolute cream of the crop, the best players that there were. So I've gone for 5 players that I think just excelled themselves, and this was very, very tough to call, and there's players that you've got a different opinion on, so that's what the comments are for. Get stuck in. I'm Tim, this is Egg Chasers, and it's pretty mad. Yeah, welcome to Greece. You might be thinking, hold on, Tim was in Paris last night. Yes, I was in Paris last night. I didn't stay in a hotel or anything. I got a little bit of kip in Orly Airport in Paris, and then was on a plane out to Kalamata. My mum lives out here a lot of the year, and my missus and my kids are out here on their school half-term break, so I thought I'd come and spend a few days with them before going back to Paris for the Rugby World Cup final and the 3rd, 4th place playoff. I still haven't come down from last night. I think partly because I'm spaced out, not sleeping. So proud of England, just so proud of the sport, and I love the fact I follow rugby. The fans were amazing. Yeah, one that's going to live long in the memory. And yeah, let's get on with it then. So top 5 performances from this weekend as I saw it. And it's quite difficult, and let me say at the outset, it's quite difficult to pick, well firstly it's quite difficult to pick any Argentinian players. Spoiler alert, I didn't. I don't even think any Argentinian fans would take any issue with that. But it's quite difficult to pick New Zealanders because it was so one-sided. It's hard to tell how much was that down to New Zealand just being incredible. In which case, maybe there's some New Zealand players that are a bit hard done by in this list. And how much was that because that Argentina were really, really poor? Because it honestly felt like they were just happy to be there. Anyway. But it is a New Zealander that is at the start of my list, at number 5, Handre Pollard. I thought this was an absolutely brilliant performance. For me, he was actually, I don't even know who the man of the match was. Was it Will Jordan? I thought Handre Pollard was the best player on the park. And he only played 56 minutes. It was a masterclass. And talking of loose-head masterclasses, we saw a few of those this weekend, didn't we? Handre Pollard was brilliant. He won scrum pens. He made 16 tackles. He was an absolute menace at the breakdown. He is a modern-day loose-head prop rugby athlete. And before the World Cup, and go back a few months, I was talking about, by the end of the World Cup, the New Zealand front row and those props, Lomax and de Groot, could take over. And this is what I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. This is what I said a couple of months ago, that I think by the end of the World Cup, they may take over from Kitshoff and Malherbe. They have the potential to take over as the premier props on earth. Put a pin in that conversation, and obviously that's one we can talk about in the next week as we build up to a Rugby World Cup final. Handre Pollard, number 5 in my list of top players this weekend. At number 4, Handre Pollard. Easy to say now, isn't it? Hindsight's always 20/20. Monday morning quarterbacking, he should have started. I guess as soon as you saw the weather forecast for the game in Paris last night, still feels weird that it's last night. And honestly, I've gone over and over that game in my head so many times, I can't imagine how the players are feeling. Massive sense of relief if you're a South African player, and just the one that got away if you're an England player. Anyway, Handre Pollard, easy to say he should have started. I think he probably will start the World Cup final now, won't he? Because it could be tight and tense, and the weather is turning now. Not here in Greece, I'm delighted to say. And you have to say fair play for the coaches for making that bold call after 31 minutes, taking off Marnie Lebok. And I really like what Jacques Nienaber said after the game, saying that, you know, it's the special thing about this squad is a player has an off day, and it's not personal, and they just cover for each other. One person's not doing well, someone else takes up the slack. And another day, it'll be Handre Pollard is not getting the attacking game going, and Marnie Lebok will come on and just shred up the defences. And that may be the balance they go with for the final, I would imagine. Handre Pollard was brilliant. And what was amazing, listening to him in a post-match chat, I heard one interview he did. I think it was on the BBC, and so I didn't hear any others. But he sounded like he absolutely loves the pressure. He was asked about that final kick from very nearly halfway. And he just had a big grin on his face, and you could tell just from what I heard, you could tell he was smiling and saying, "That's what fly halves practice for. That's the pressure that you want." It's like he is a big game player, and on that one moment alone justified entirely why he was brought back into the squad when some would have opted for a hooker. Absolutely brilliant. There's so many other players that I would want to mention, particularly from England, who I think I described in the build-up to the game that England's players all needed to hit like 9 out of 10 to stand a chance of beating South Africa. And even if they did hit that level, it still might not be enough to win. That's pretty much as it panned out. And Freddie Stewart was incredible. George Martin was an absolute revelation. Just on George Martin, by the way, who isn't on my top 5 list, which is why I'm just mentioning him briefly now. 22 years of age, only his 4th start for England. Future England captain right there. His defence. And it's one of those times, I've said a lot of stuff on videos where, in retrospect, you sort of go, oh, I got that really wrong. My video, and by all means go back and have a look at it, because I look like a genius. Go back and have a look at my video from when the England team was announced. And yeah, that's one video where I actually look like I know what I'm talking about. And yeah, George Martin, Maul, brilliant, smashed Moster into next week. He is a legit player, and but he's not on my list, which is why I'm just briefly mentioning him, because number 3 is Tom Curry. Oh my God, what a warrior. What a warrior. I love him so much. Absolutely heroic. And England really missed him when he had to go off. And I say had to go off because he was hobbling off. His face looked like he'd been in a car crash. But that's because he just put his head in some dark places. And yeah, absolutely bossed Sia Khaleesi. Saw him off. Absolutely was all over Cobus Reinach. Saw him off. And he was a massive part of, excuse me, of why England did so well. He was immense as a ball carrier. Just the work rate. There was one moment in the, was it early in the second half? I just watched him for about a minute, and oh my, his engine is unbelievable. What a player! What a player! And he's back. And this goes for a lot of England players, back to where we knew that they could be and back where they have been in the past. Like Maro Itoje was back to the Maro Itoje we saw in the 2017 Lions series. Tom Curry was back to where he was 4 years ago. And yeah, he was absolutely immense. Freddie Stewart was back to where we know he is as someone under the bombs. But it's so I'm mentioning other names because it's so hard to pick 5. Number 2, Courtney Lawes. I imagine Courtney, again, excuse me, knowing the kind of guy he is, I imagine he will want to play some part in the game on Friday, the 3rd, 4th place playoff, because it may be his final game in an England shirt. For what it's worth, I think you'll hear a lot of conversation, and this is something we can have on the channel as well. I think you'll hear a lot of conversation about people saying, right, England need to get rid of all the old guys, bring in the kids. Steve Borthwick made a brilliant point in the post-match press conference that England have more under 25-year-olds in their matchday squad than any team in the semi-finals. We've got a good load of good young players. We don't need to just clear out the older guys. Let's try and win the Six Nations in February. We don't have to just get kids in left, right and centre. That performance was something we can build from. And so I'd be up for Courtney Lawes continuing with England. I hope he does. But if that is his last performance in an England jersey, he will have gone out on his feet. What a man. What a man. I love him. I love him. And there's a video in the channel of a bit of a tribute to Courtney Lawes. It hasn't actually got that many views, so you should maybe seek it and check it out. And it's a little tribute to the man. And yeah, you saw, I talk about him quite a lot being like my favourite rugby player, and he is. There's a couple, him, I love Peter Romani. I love lots of players for different reasons, but I have a special love for Courtney Lawes. And you saw why. He's turned into England's best player at the breakdown. He chased kicks, defended like an absolute legend. I love the guy. So Courtney Lawes is my number 2. Number 1, though, for me, across the weekend, there was one man that made more difference than anybody else, and so deserves to be number 1, despite not even playing half a game. That man. A fun bus of a man, Nche, was sensational. And it's not only in this game. So, I mean, I can't imagine how you must have aged in the last couple of days if you're South African. Or the last week, sorry. with the 2 games, the one against France last weekend, the one against England last night. I mean, must have taken years off your life. And the only, not the only reason, maybe the key reason why in both of those games you came through and got the W and you've gone through a quarter, through a semi, to a World Cup final is because of that man right there. He did it last week, came on, got scrum ascendancy just when South Africa needed it, and he completely flipped the script last night. And it meant that South Africa were able to call a scrum from a mark in their own 22, won the penalty kick, and obviously we know what happened in the last moment of the game. And the game is won over 80 minutes, but it's moments, isn't it? It's moments. And that man was the best player, or the most valuable, the most important, the most decisive player out of any player who played over the World Cup semi-finals. And man alive, he may well be, well, it's hard to say because Mbonambi was incredibly valuable to South Africa as well, played a full 80 minutes at hooker. But yeah, that guy doesn't come off the bench. South Africa do not win that game. It is as simple as that. And probably the same goes for the quarter-final against France as well. There's other players, as I've already mentioned a bunch of others. Owen Farrell was incredible. I've just mentioned Mbonambi. And Will Jordan was amazing for New Zealand. There's so many, but I've tried to pick 5. And tell me if you agree, disagree, what you think. Thanks so much for the support on the channel. I think last night was one of those nights where I think there's an argument that kind of some people think that wasn't rugby as they want rugby to be. I just thought it was everything rugby can be. Total intense, completely gripping, horrible conditions. So that dictated how the game was going to go. But 2 incredible teams. Well, and I'm glad for the semi-finals and I'm glad for the World Cup that there was something that went down to the wire, because if it had gone the way of Friday night's game, then I think the narrative of the World Cup overall would have been very, very different. So I am going to go to the beach, go and see the kids, go and spend a bit of family time. I'll be putting more content up on the channel, don't you worry about that. And I'll be back in Paris in a few days for the build-up to the 2023 Rugby World Cup final. I'll see you on the next one.